We have reached the midpoint of the year. The US economy has been showing resilience in spite of it being a little bit soft in many areas. The June non-farm payrolls actually added 57,000 jobs, which was still below expectations. Good, not great, but unemployment dipped 4.2%. The big question is always how many of those unemployment numbers include or don't include folks that just quit looking for a job. So we always question if that number is actually higher. Services sector, PMI edged down to 54, but remained expansive, and employment is rebounding a little bit. Fed held their rate stable, as I'm sure everybody saw. Everybody was watching them. Fed rate still 3.5 to 3.75. The new Fed chair Warsh has actually said that they might need to increase their Fed rate later this year. So a rate increase would be very different, and a shift from the downward trend we've been seeing over the last couple of years. Remains to be seen how that could directly or indirectly impact the real estate market and mortgage rates. Forecasting for the GDP growth for 2026, that is getting tempered by the inflation numbers that we're seeing, and obviously the geopolitical issues in the Middle East that may or may not be winding down, because I feel like it changes every single week. So we'll see. Overall, things are just kind of stagnant, which sometimes is not great. Moving up, moving down, at least there's momentum one way or the other. Stagnant markets can be a little challenging in a lot of different ways. So globally, growth is projected to slow. So the IMF came out, they're forecasting 3% for 2026. The World Bank is projecting 2.5%. That's a little less than what I think everybody was hoping for. So we'll see. Right now, a lot of the tech and AI momentum is kind of what's driving markets. You know, if we always take that portion out, how's everything else doing? But that's not always the best argument either, because again, you say, look, the market is the whole, and there's always some portion, whether it's manufacturing, maybe it's services, maybe for this decade, it's been this one thing, and that is part of the market. Now we're just seeing that AI tech being the strong portion. So nationally, let's talk about our housing market. It's been balancing, and we're going to talk a little bit about the national numbers, but then also, as I have said time and time again, the national numbers do not always indicate what is happening locally. So on a national level, the median listing prices have been declining. Rising inventory and pending sales, or I should say lack of, has been giving buyers a little bit more leverage in a lot of markets. However, there are some sub-markets that are doing really well right now. They're actually seeing price appreciation. Affordability is still the big issue right now. Rates, again, since the beginning of the year, rates have come up about 0.5%. They peaked and started to pull back just a little bit, but they've been pretty flat the last 30 days. They haven't really done much. So they're still right in that 6.5 to 6.625, maybe 6.75, depending on the week or the day. Again, talk to your mortgage professional. Locally, let's talk about the Sacramento region. So we're kind of stable. However you look at that, we're almost dead flat for the last 3 years. Median sales prices are down approximately 2.1% year over year in the greater Sacramento region, but I am very hesitant to quote that because it does change month over month. And that's where we really have to look at the long-term trends in the area, not just the month over month, or compare June this year to June of last year, July of this year to July of last year. That doesn't work, because if you have one little change last year and now we're comparing, that's why I really like looking at things from a macro level. So overall, I would say that the economy is demonstrating some resilience. There is uncertainty in a lot of different areas, energy prices, policy shifts, a lot of things are happening. And then obviously all of the changes that are coming through, all of the AI, it's energy costs, data centers, construction costs, and then just, the employment issue. And I've been hearing a lot of conflicting information, which I'm actually glad to hear. If it was completely one-sided in a negative way, that might not be a good thing. But I am hearing that a lot of companies are not really laying off because of AI. A lot of those layoffs have been necessary just for the structure of the company and the economics, the revenue versus the expenses. However, it does not seem that the AI is actually having as big an impact as some of these large, and I use the term loosely, news sources would have you believe. I heard a report, I'll have to dig it up. I thought that was a really great thing. And, that takes a little bit of that negative pressure off of everyone to say, you know what, maybe my job isn't in jeopardy. But my caution is you do need to learn how to properly use AI with some level of depth. We're working on that now, not just asking ChatGPT everything that you would have asked Google 2 years ago. That's not using AI. To really use it to its potential is going to take some time to learn and dig in. And that's not an overnight thing. So I think it's going to be great in a lot of ways. I'm really excited to use that to more of its potential, but it will take some time. So let's dig into the reason you're here. Real estate, what is happening? So Tri-County market, we always start there first. Right now, the amount of available inventory actually increased 6.2%. So we're going to go, these are all of the stats for the month of June. Now that we have the full month of data, we did see the active listings increase by 6.2%. It's actually been increasing since December. So we've got a solid 6 months of increasing inventory, totally typical. This is 6.8% lower than it was last year though. So again, lower numbers, lower inventory. If you're feeling that, this is why. The issues we're having in the market is feeling the impact of some inflation, higher gas prices, all the conflict, the uncertainty. So it seems that while we are seeing increases for this year, those numbers are lower than they were last year. And that's just a lot of sellers being hesitant and not knowing if this is the best time for them to take action and put their homes on the market. When I would say on some level, the inventory is down, which means your competition is down. So if you're thinking about selling, every case is different, but that could be one reason to look at maybe this is a good time for you personally. So pendings in the Tri-County area rose by 7.9%. That they've been on an upward trend. Number of pendings is 18.1% higher than 1 year ago. So a lot more buyer activity is out there, which is interesting with less seller activity. In spite of the stubborn mortgage rates in the higher sixes, buyers are still making the decision to get out into the market, make offers, and get moving. Now we are seeing that really high increase in pending activity. But being in the market day in and day out, I can tell you a lot of escrows are falling through right now. So the way that we measure pendeds is if a property gets listed and it goes into contract and then falls out and goes back into contract, that does count as 2 pendeds for the month. So that could also be part of the reason that that number is increasing so much versus some of the other numbers that really aren't moving to that level of volume. Days on market improved, and actually, we held stable at 35 days, which is great. That's pretty quick for the way the market's moving right now. Not mad at all. List price to sold price ratio increased. It is 99% right now. So that is good news for this time of year. And homes are actually selling 1 day faster than they were this time last year. So again, a lot of things are just in line. We're seeing a similar market to 2025. Median sold price of single family homes in the Tri-County area, drum roll, it held stable. So it's $610,000 again for the month of June. We'll see what happens in July. That is, again, this continuing trend. It's flat year over year. So we're seeing a repeat of 2025. Months of inventory held stable. It's at 2.3 months. Still, that's barely on the seller side of a buyer-seller market. So we're a little light on the inventory. That being said, it really does come down to the house, the condition, the pricing, the neighborhood, and everything else, whether you're going to have a really strong buyer interest in your home or whether it's going to sit. Like I said, the increasing level of pending activity, I'm kind of watching the numbers. I'm curious, that could be a really good sign for the later summer market, or it could just be that a lot of properties are going into contract and then falling through. So I don't know that I'd get super excited about that yet. I will keep watching. So moving on to Placer County, residential homes for sale, single family homes increased by 9.7% in June. That's 8.5% less than last year. So again, inventory is down. Interestingly, the pendeds in Placer County dropped 2.9% from May to June. So kind of interesting. That's still a little bit better than it was this time last year, but not nearly. We saw a positive increase in the Tri-County and just a slight drop in Placer County. So I think that maybe a lot of folks are just, everybody I talk to, I swear they're out of town, they're on vacation. So if buyers aren't in town to be able to look at homes, to tour homes, to make offers, we're not going to see that pendant activity. As a seller, you can put your home on the market and go on vacation. In fact, it's almost the best thing to do because then we can just show it. We don't have to set appointments. We can do our jobs, which is great. So if you're a seller, list your house and go on vacation. So anyway, back to it. Sold homes, actually the number of homes sold fell by 0.2% in June. We saw some really strong buyer activity in May, but then that did drop. So number of homes sold is 20.6% higher than this time last year. So that is really nice to see in our sales volume. But as I've said, watching 1 month doesn't make a market. So watching things from a much higher level, we're seeing decent activity, but our volume's still off a little bit over a macro chart. So days on market fell. It is down to 35 days, which is the same as the Tri-County area. So that's 16.7% improvement in Placer County. And we do seem to see some more volatility in the numbers. We see larger swings on some of our data once we get down to just the county level. So list price to sold price, that rose. So it dropped to 98%. Now it is back up to 99% in Placer County, which is great. And that may have been a result of just a little bit of improvement in mortgage rates. Maybe buyers got back in the market. They were willing to pay a little bit more, or maybe sellers were just, more realistic about the prices that they were bringing their homes to market. They weren't trying to overprice things. So Placer County, the median sold price for single family homes actually fell. Less than 1%. It fell by 0.7%. So the median sold price of homes in Placer County dropped from $685,000 down to $680,000. That's actually a 2.9% drop from the same time last year. So I'll keep watching that. Overall, we see these slight movements, but the home values have been pretty flat. Inventory levels in Placer County increased 2.2 to 2.4 months. So a little increase in months of inventory, which is fine. Always expect that this time of year, but that's still, again, continuing the trend. It is 2.9% lower than this time last year. So our inventory still just is not there. Good sales volume, good pendings, good strength, good movement, but volume of sold homes just has not come back to where we would like to see in a normal market. That's it for this month. If you want a report for your home, your neighborhood, or your zip code, reach out, send me a message. I'd be glad to put that together for you. And we could even hop on a call, or we can sit down in person and go through it. If you've thought about selling your home, want to figure out if this is a good time, let me know. I would be glad to run through the pros and cons with you. I have talked myself out of a few listings, but I believe in giving people the truth and the right information to make the best decision. And that's not always listing your home. Sometimes it's hang on to it, keep it as a rental, maybe do some more improvements and reapproach the market next year. So if you want an impartial report and information, I'd be glad to help you out with that. So have a great month. We'll talk to you next time.